Entrepreneur event. I'm Gary Stein, and this is our first virtual entrepreneur event, and we're thrilled and grateful to have our sponsors and speakers for making this program possible today. We thank all of you for joining us this afternoon for this tribute to the entrepreneurial innovators among us and a celebration of the spirit of today's entrepreneur in general. It is indeed a pleasure to moderate this event. None of this could have happened without our sponsors, so I'd like to take a moment to thank our event sponsors, and I'd also like to introduce our speakers. Our sponsors today include Hungry Harvest, a produce delivery service on a mission to create a better food system. They source fresh, recovered produce from farms and deliver it to your doorstep each week for 20% less than grocery. They also have a hunger-fighting mission to increase access to fresh produce for people who live in food insecurity. And you can sign up for a weekly box or just to find out more information about Hungry Harvest at hungryharvest.net. Another sponsor, Advanced Business Systems, a people company with an intense passion for improving their customers' businesses and enhancing their team members' lives. Advance helps organizations become more efficient and more effective through technology, processes, and services backed by industry-leading support. Celebrating now over 56 years of serving Maryland businesses, Advance has deep roots throughout the state and is proud to partner with all types of organizations, from startups to the Baltimore Ravens. Amatus Health is a growing nationally accredited behavioral healthcare system offering treatment for addiction and co-occurring mental health disorders in facilities across the country. They offer robust healthcare revenue cycle management services so that healthcare providers can focus their energy on advocating for patients. And last but not least, CCBC and the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, providing a practical business education and access to capital for small business owners. This initiative is comparable to an accelerated, customized MBA program for small business owners selected through a competitive process. They receive hands-on education for business growth, access to lending capital, and business support services. It's a terrific program, and Rod Bourne is here to talk to you more in depth about their highly regarded program and how you might qualify. Look for him in our breakout room a little later in the program. And finally, a special thank you to Nemphos Brow, the Mid-Atlantic's leading boutique corporate law firm supporting corporate growth at every stage of business. Nemphos Brow specializes in corporate business, startup, and entrepreneurial law, and their team has extensive experience in the areas of intellectual property, mergers and acquisitions, and general counsel practices. Nemphos Brow is also committed to providing timely information regarding state and federal programs to assist businesses during these trying times. You can learn more about Nemphos Brow online at nemphosbrow.com. That's spelled Nemphos Brow, BRAUE.com. Our speakers tonight, all leaders in the Baltimore business community. Evan Lutz is the CEO of Hungry Harvest, and he'll be with us tonight. Jeff Elkin is the president of Advanced Business Systems. He'll be with us as well. Mark Gold is the CEO of Amatus Health, who I had the pleasure of interviewing just a few short weeks ago on a Jmore podcast we did on health innovations. Those are our speakers and our sponsors tonight. And a quick note for all of our attendees that you can use the chat tonight or this afternoon on our Zoom to ask questions of any of our speakers, and we'll get that question to them hopefully in a timely fashion. Also, we'll be giving out raffle prizes. We'll be selecting 3 of our attendees tonight. The raffle prize is courtesy of Hungry Harvest, one of our show sponsors here this afternoon, and we'll give you a little bit more information about that as we go on in the program. I'd like to turn it over to Scott Rifkin, if I may, for a moment. Scott, for some introductory remarks, and also a big award tonight to our 2020 Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Scott, please take it away.
Gary, thank you. The original format tonight was I was going to open up, but being that the technology decided to not behave tonight for me as I walked in, Gary, being the professional that he is, jumped in and handled it beautifully. So Gary, thank you. Thank you. It's a thrill to have everybody at the third annual Entrepreneur of the Year event from Jmore. We've done this for a couple of years in person, had big crowds. We've also been doing, with COVID, we've been doing a series of Zoom conferences along with Associated, for example. And we're getting 2,000 to 3,000 people who view these things either in person or on Facebook later or on YouTube later. And we've really been thrilled with the response. People are at home and they want to look at things, and they want to look at the things going on in the community. So we're thrilled you're here live. There's also people on Facebook that I'm sure will ask questions, and Jonathan always has those for us. And this being the Entrepreneur of the Year event, we're thrilled that so many entrepreneurial folks are here. I heard you doing a nice description of Nemphos Brow, and I know George Nemphos is on the call today. And George, as we speak, is finishing a $20 million investment into one of our companies. And he has single-handedly pulled it through. He's done a great job, and their firm has done a great job in helping us make that happen. So George, thank you. And whatever recognition you get for helping us put on this event, it's truly appreciated and deserved. So thank you. I don't want to go with a lot of comments. Lauren prepared about 3 pages of comments for me. And none of it, and it all makes perfect sense, except if I read it, you'd all think that I was some stiff guy reading off a teleprompter or something. So I'm not going to read that. But I will say this about entrepreneurism. You know, you hear about the Googles and the Amazons and the huge companies of this country. And what's really though true is it's the small businesses, the entrepreneurs who drive the economy. And when the COVID stuff starts to slow down, it's the entrepreneurs who are going to pick up their pace again. You know, unfortunately, the biggest businesses have benefited from this crisis. The smaller businesses have been affected. The good news is that small businesses fill the gaps and jump in where there's needs, can be way more nimble, way quicker than any big company can be. So in some way, the smaller businesses and the small entrepreneurs have an advantage over the biggest businesses out there. And I don't doubt that the recovery will be led by the entrepreneurs, not by the big national companies. So I'm thrilled to have everybody here today. Gary is, I'm sure, going to introduce each individual person. But Gary, I assume you've jumped in and heard you as you were talking about the individual sponsors. So should I just jump right to the presentation? Is that where we should go?
Yeah, I think that would probably be best. Go ahead and handle that.
Very good. I will read a little bit about this, but it's certainly interesting. We honor today Evan Lutz. And Evan runs a company called Hungry Harvest. And you may have seen this. I saw it in the newspapers recently. They're getting some great press. Evan is a 27-year-old social entrepreneur for Baltimore. The 27 alone makes me jealous, okay? But he's a 27-year-old entrepreneur from Baltimore. He's passionate about food justice, about entrepreneurship, and actually the Ravens as well. He's a frequent guest on NPR, the Washington Post, and the Baltimore news stations. He's been recognized in Forbes Under 30, in Baltimore's in the social entrepreneurship category, in Baltimore's 40 Under 40 and Montgomery County's Emerging Business of the Year awards. That award was previously won by Honest Tea, Sweet Green, and Comcast. He's been on ABC's Shark Tank, where he made a deal. And I'd love to hear how that worked out for him. And that would be really interesting to me. Evan, congratulations on all your accomplishments and all you're going to do in the future. And we thank you, and we are thrilled to award you Jmore's Entrepreneur of the Year for 2020. So thank you so much, and I'll turn this back to Gary.
Scott, thank you. And Evan, congratulations. It's well-deserved, of course. Tell us just a little bit about how it feels to get the award to start us off.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for this award. It's really such an honor for me to receive this and be recognized by Jmore and have all of you guys here. And it's such a pleasure to actually see people, right? Even though you guys are tiny little thumbnails, it's nice to be able to see everybody's faces. It's been so long since I've been able to enjoy a public event or public forum. So it is truly humbling to receive this award, and I can't thank you guys enough for considering me worthy enough to receive this. It's been surely a journey over the past 6 years of starting Hungry Harvest. My life story about why I want to become an entrepreneur. I'm really inspired by mortality, actually. The fact that we only get one shot at life, right? We got one shot to try and make an impact. And I decided really early on, I actually heard if anybody is a member of Bethel, it was actually a sermon by Rabbi Schwartz, maybe when I was like 12 or 13, where he was talking something, it was a subject about mortality. And that's when I decided I want to make as big an impact as I possibly could on this planet. And I started to get interested in entrepreneurship when I was like a teenager. And so I wanted to combine the idea of business and starting a business and doing as much good as I possibly could on this planet. And so I attended University of Maryland, and I started selling ugly produce, right? Produce that otherwise would go to waste from one local farm to college students. It was a class project. I was taking a social entrepreneurship class, and for this class project to get an A, you had to actually start a business. And I was the last person to think that this was ever going to work. I was really just trying to get an A. And so I went to this guy's farm, and I saw all this produce that otherwise would go to waste. And it turns out that as the untrained consumer, I couldn't tell the difference between that produce and anything else that he would otherwise be selling. So I started this little farm stand and sold 5 pounds for $5 first week. I'll never forget. I was hauling, bags of 50 pounds of onions and potatoes up and down these stairs of like a dorm, and everybody was looking at me weird because this was like a college dorm and nobody knew what I was doing. I didn't really know what I was doing. And that's when it hit me. It was like, this is really cool. This is something that's very unique. It's not the average story that at the time, I guess I was 21, would take. And that's when I was kind of hooked, when I made the first sale and got that first $5. And by the end of that first day, I got $100 from 20 customers or so. And then after 6 months, it was 500 customers per week. And that's when I decided to turn it into Hungry Harvest. Started it in Pikesville, lived in my parents' basement, right across from the quarry. If anybody knows where that is, for the first 2 years of starting this. And today, after 6 years of doing this in business, we've recovered about 20 million pounds of produce, and we employ about 100 people, deliver to 7 different cities in Baltimore, DC, Washington, Philly, Detroit, Charlotte, Miami, and Raleigh. And over the years, what I find fascinating about entrepreneurship is you really only need a few traits to be able to do it, right? I had no experience. I had no business getting into the produce industry, no business getting into logistics or management or marketing. I didn't know anything really when I first started. And I was just really passionate about fixing the food system, about starting a business that mattered, that made a difference, and dedicating my life towards the greater good, right? Making a real impact. And I was trying to be resilient, right? There was a lot of ups and downs in those first few years of not making any income, of living at home, of trying to figure out the very, very, very complicated food system that we live in today, and why there's so much waste and so much hunger, and figuring out all these things, which we still haven't figured out, by the way, 6 years into it. But for those first couple of years, there was a really big learning curve, and resiliency was key. Our team had to literally pack boxes in my parents' garage or in a parking lot, and really try to figure out how to make this thing work. And ultimately we pushed through and got a deal on Shark Tank, raised a little bit of money, hired some more folks, convinced some more people to sign up. And here we are. We've made a big impact. And I think in the future, we're trying to make it 10 times as much impact we've made over the past 6 years, just the next couple of years alone. So that's kind of the plan that we're on. And again, what's such an honor to accept this award and for you guys to invite me here today. And it's really a blessing to be able to see everybody here today as well. Just to wrap up, I just want everybody to take a little bit of perspective. Obviously, these are interesting times that we're living in, right? With COVID and race relations and a lot of different things that are going on. But I think a lot of it, can actually be used if you look at it through a lens of gratitude. You know, we're looking at personally, I'm looking at things in a much different perception today than I was even 6 months ago before COVID hit. A different relationship you have with your workplace, right? The actual place that you work, different relationship with your family. You get to spend more time at home, different relationship with your actual house, the place that you work out of, with your parents, with your family, and how much you cherish, you know, being able to see folks in person. I think there's a lot we can take away that's actually positive out of these very interesting times that we live in. And I think that's kind of what entrepreneurship is all about, is looking at things opportunistically and optimistically and seeing the good in things and trying to take advantage and learn from it. So I'll end my ramble with that. And again, I can't thank you guys enough for having me on and granting me this award. So thank you so much.
Well, that was a very extremely articulate ramble, Evan. So congratulations on that. But since you're a big football fan, I thought maybe I'd start off a little bit of Q&A with you on this. You know, that overview that you gave of your career basically is a good overview from the 50-yard line, as it were, upper deck 50-yard line. But if we go down onto the field for a minute and we get a little bit more granular with some of the events that may have happened to you in your life, in your career, I'd like to talk about a couple things, if that's okay with you. Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that your company, you know, basically started in your, was it your parents' basement or your parents' garage?
Parents' garage, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, you had to be resilient and all those things. But I'm looking on your website, and I know a little bit about your story. There were times where your company was in danger of failing. You had less or about $200 in your bank account. You were getting doors slammed in your face left and right. You talk about mortality, right? A mere mortal would usually pack it in. They would say, look, I'm 21 years old, 22 years old. I can go get a job. I can go work, you know, whatever. Go on Wall Street, do this, do that, do the other thing. It'll be easy. I'll make X amount of money and I'll start a career. That's what mere mortals would do, right? Talk about mortality. What sustained you? What drove you to continue?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, there were many times that at my own fault, our business almost failed. I had serious problems with culture when we were first starting, where we had serious disagreements with co-founders, and some folks left. There were many times when, you know, we had, you know, 100K in payroll coming up in 2 weeks, and we only had, you know, $10,000 in our bank account, right? And we had to make ends meet and try to meet those goals. That happened a few times, right? And it was really tough. What kept me going is, you know, a couple phrases that I always go back to, that I think sum them up better than, and I didn't think of these phrases, I heard them, but they sum them up better than any thoughts I could put together. One of them is, you have more to offer the world, right? I heard that somewhere. I think it was from a mentor, when I was talking to them about actually giving up and saying, you know what, this is not worth it. All the effort we're putting in, all the stress it's causing myself, on my relationship with my girlfriend, my relationship with my parents, it's just not worth it. And they told me, you have more to offer the world. And that made me think, like, you know, no matter how much pain that this causes, no matter how much suffering you have to go through, the fact is, there is more in you. In me, I felt like there was more in me that I had to offer the world than whatever it is that temporary I was going through, whether it was a cash flow management, whether it was stress about giving up. And so I kind of was able to talk to some friends and mentors and therapists, quite frankly, and work myself out of it, right? And I'm not ashamed about that at all. I think therapy is a fantastic tool to keep you resilient and keep you going through. And I don't think mental health nearly gets talked about enough in our society. Hearing that phrase said back to me, you have more to offer the world, it was such a blessing, because now I'm able to tell that to other folks who are thinking about giving up on their careers, right? Or calling it quits on their entrepreneurship ventures. And, you know, to be honest, sometimes it is time to quit, right? Sometimes there are businesses that just aren't going to work. But another phrase that I learned or very early on is giving something your best effort. When I mean best effort, I don't mean it in a cliche way, like give something your best. I mean, like, your very best, like you're on your hands and knees crawling best. Like, this is your very, very best. You got nothing left in the tank. There's no other options left to try best. Because usually when people are giving up, they haven't given their true best. And I was at that point many times where, again, I needed to hear these phrases back to me. You have more to offer the world. You need to give it your very, very, very best effort. And I'm glad I did and stuck it through. And again, I think it was a blessing to hear those phrases, because now I can share that same story with others.
Take us back to the appearance on Shark Tank. Scott Rifkin alluded to it a moment ago. I think we're all very interested, if not almost in awe of that. I'm speaking for myself now, obviously, but maybe for others. Give us the backstory. What happened? How did it happen?
Yeah, thanks. Shark Tank was an exhilarating experience, I think is the best word to describe it. So back in early 2015, we actually got introduced to one of the producers through, I think, one of my coworkers' family friends who had been on the show, had told them about our idea, and they reached out and they said, why don't you guys apply? And we said, okay, sure. Why don't, what's the application process? So they said 45,000 companies apply. We only film and air we film 160, we air 120 of them. And you have to complete a handwritten 50-page application, right? And it takes like 3 months. We're like, no, thank you. Again, alluding to early in the story, we had no idea what we were doing in the beginning of this business, right? We were just getting started in produce. We had boxes to make, we had logistics to figure out. We had all these different things to figure out. So we didn't have time to apply to Shark Tank, even though that was, any entrepreneur, it was one of my dreams to be on that show. So we kind of turned it down. And then a few months later, they sent us another email. So we really want you guys to apply. We could tell, like, maybe there's something here that we're not seeing. Maybe they really want us to apply. Maybe we have the inside track or something. Who knows? So we did apply. We sat down. We did the 50-page handwritten application, which I hadn't written that much since high school, which I don't even think I wrote that much in high school. It was insane. I couldn't move my hand for days after that. And we made like a 6 to 8 minute video, which we filmed in like an afternoon. It was really corny, and we got on to the next round and the next round. And a few months later, in June, so starting this process February and June, they called us and said, guess what? We're flying you out to go film in LA on Shark Tank, which was one of the best calls I've ever got in my entire life. The second best call or email I've got in my life. I'll allude to the first and the second. And so between that time and when we actually flew out, we had about 3 weeks. And so I sat down, I watched every episode of Shark Tank. I don't think you heard me. Every episode of Shark Tank. I talked about best effort, right? Every single episode of Shark Tank. I wrote down every question that has ever been asked in that show and wrote down an answer, exactly how we wanted to answer on the show, right? And then the next process was, after we wrote down all the answers we want to memorize and all the questions they could have asked us, practice and memorization. So sat down and just memorized it. Not to the point where you can memorize something on a test where you have time to think about it, to the point where, like, somebody asks you a question, comes right to your head, right? Different kind of memorization. And so we flew out there, and then we went to the studio after like day 2 or day 3. They basically put you in a green room. They have you sit there all day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They can knock on your door at any time and tell you you're up in 30 minutes. So you have to be ready to go. At 6 p.m., they knocked on our door and say, we're going to try and squeeze you in. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, so I've been here for 12 hours. That means the Sharks have too, right? They're probably exhausted, hungry, tired. What are the chances they want to make a deal? And I also want to put it out there. The point of the show is not to raise money. The point of the show is to make sure you don't look like an idiot, right? It's a 6-minute advertisement for your business. And so you don't want to look like an idiot. So the whole point is making sure they're not too mean to you, right? So I got ready, got dressed in my suit, I was ready to go, walked over to the studio, and they knocked on my door when I was in the other green room and said, sorry, we're going to squeeze you in tomorrow. So I slept on that all night. That was fun. Woke up 6 a.m. the next day, did it all again. And I think I was the second person to go. They have this door that you stand in front of, and they do like this countdown when they're saying, okay, doors opening in 10, 9, 8. And my heart was like beating through my chest. Oh my God, I was so nervous. Doors opened, did my little walk, strut, confidence boosting thing. stood in front of the sharks. You're about 10 feet away from them. And after about 30 seconds, the producer says, and begin. And I knew if I began with a stutter or I couldn't get my first words out, I was gonna have a really bad episode. It would kill my confidence. Luckily, I nailed it. And about 30 minutes later, I walked out of there with a deal. And if you guys have seen the episode, everything that I said on that episode was 100% rehearsed. I had thought about every single question on there. And again, the point of the show is make sure you don't look like an idiot, right? It's not to actually make a deal. And so I was really proud of our team for we put in the work to make sure that, we came out with a successful outcome. It wasn't necessarily to get a deal, but to make sure we were good. And I thought we did a good job at presenting on the show because of all that work that we put in. And so about 6 months later, I had to keep this all a secret for actually indefinite. I didn't know if they were ever going to air us, right? Because it's on ABC, something extreme could have happened, and they could have not aired our episode, for example. So we get an email. We were about to take a 4-day break right before Christmas of 2015, and instead we got an email saying, "Hey, guess what? You guys are airing on January 8th." And so the next 3 weeks were the hardest we've ever worked in our lives. We only had about 400 customers at that point. We're making a couple hundred boxes per week. And we were about to be shown to 8 million people, okay? Our business was not ready to handle this. Our website did crash. We had a really cool launch party where we had the Lieutenant Governor come out and the Howard County Executive and all their friends and family. And we aired, and luckily we got a really good edit of that 6 minutes of film. And within 3 weeks, we went from 400 customers to about 4,000. And that's kind of what kicked us off. From there, we were able to raise a little bit of seed money, hire a team, and again, here we are. About, I guess, what was that, 2016? So 4 years later, and got a team of about 100 or so. So it's been again a blessing to have ever been on that show, and been really a humbling experience since then.
Well, it's quite a story. I've got a lot more questions to ask you. I'm sure we could dig much deeper, but I do want to get to some questions from our attendees. So let me do that first. This one is from Ed Mullen to you, Evan. And the question is, what was the best advice that you have ever gotten from a mentor or a book that you may have read?
There's a lot of good ones, but I'll pick out one or two. One is be the leader you wish you had. It's a really strong one. I found myself actually pretty recently, about a year and a half ago, getting way too comfortable with my one-on-ones, my check-ins that I had with my employees and coworkers. And we weren't having any really good conversations, we were just having the check-ins to have check-ins, right? And what really was not hearing their problems out properly or listening to them or really acting on them. And I was talking through this with a mentor of mine. He said, be the leader that you wanted. And that made me think what if I was sitting on the other side of the chair, what would I think of how the CEO is acting right now, right? Just not listening nearly to the extent I should have been. And so that kind of changed and made me put so much more thought and effort into how I actually went about managing some of the employees and leading them, and kind of writing down a lot, meditating and thinking and journaling a lot about the thoughts of who would I want as my CEO, and thinking through that process was really powerful. And the second thing that I've kind of been on recently is this idea of essentialism. Has anybody read this book? It's a really good book. It's kind of extreme, but it's a really good point. So my life has been, I'm sure like everybody else's lives that are listening, has been absolutely crazy. As of recently, our business has been very fortunate to have actually been increased by the recent crisis, and our volume has increased. And so we've got a lot going on. And I've found myself saying yes to so many things, so many meetings, so many different pitches, a lot of different things. And it's like, what do I really need to do today? What do I really need to do for my team? What do I really need to do to the business, for the business this week, this month, and really at a granular level today? And those are the only things I should be working on, right? That's it. Like, say yes to nothing else. And I think that's kind of led me in the right direction to getting my schedule in a much better place than where it was a few months ago, where I was like wasn't sleeping, working night shifts, and just way out of whack. So those are the two things I would say out of a book and out of a mentor that I would share with the group.
Well, Evan, we do have a few more questions for you, but in the interest of time, I think, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to them. But what a great story, Evan. We really appreciate you. We appreciate what you've done for the community, really what you're trying to do for the country and the world when it comes to that. So thank you so much, and congratulations on your award here this afternoon.
Thank you guys so much. It means the world to just hear that. Thank you.
Absolutely. We do have periodically throughout the afternoon, we'll be picking raffle winners, as I mentioned earlier, 3 to be exact, from among our attendees of this afternoon's event. Our prize, which is actually courtesy of Evan Lutz and Hungry Harvest, is a produce delivery box. They're called mini harvests, and they're delivered for free. They consist of 8 to 10 pounds of produce, which is 1 green, 3 veggies, and 2 to 3 types of fruit. So again, we'll be awarding 3 of these to our attendees this afternoon. The first one goes to Olivia Bushong. Congratulations, Olivia. We'll get your information. Maybe we've already gotten it, your phone number, email, etc. And I'm sure Evan will do his due diligence in making sure that you get the mini harvest. Absolutely. I'd like to take a moment here, actually, and turn it over to someone who's become a friend of mine over the last year, and I'm proud to say that. He's made a name for himself as one of this city's leading attorneys when it comes to representing entrepreneurs, startups, emerging and mature companies, as well as venture capital and private equity funds. He is a founding member of Nemphos Brow Attorneys at Law. Please welcome a good guy, for lack of a better term, George Nemphos, to give us a word. George, please take it away.
Thanks, Gary. Checks in the mail. Evan, congratulations. That's a great story. It's always something terrific to hear about an entrepreneur who has taken their dream and made it into a reality. And in the process, doing something that not only do they love, but everyone around them loves, believes in, and finds to be, something that they want a part of their lives. So congratulations again on the award and on all your success and blessings. Gary, Jmore, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity just to say thank you. Thank you to Jmore. Thank you to all of you for allowing us to be a part of this journey and celebrating entrepreneurialism, and to take the time tonight to celebrate our winners. We at Nemphos Brow have a long history of working with entrepreneurs. We've definitely got a soft spot for them. We ourselves are entrepreneurs. We are all former big firm lawyers who realized that there was a better way to do what we did and a more human way to do what we did. And we launched Nemphos Brow. And thank you to the entrepreneurial community, supporters like JBiz, Scott Rifkin, who I obviously owe another check to for the kind words this evening. We've done well, and we've been able to do what we love. And we hope and pray that we have been able to actually have an impact on the entrepreneurs and on the business community in a positive manner. We owe it to our young people and our dreamers and our believers and our inventors to take the time to help them build something new and something sustainable in our society, in our business community. As Scott aptly put it, it's the small businesses which become big businesses. And it's those businesses that help drive our economy, drive our community, and drive our relationships. And, every day I have the good luck to be able to go to work and work with these individuals and walk away every day feeling like maybe I just helped a little bit, and maybe, just maybe, helped the reputation of a few lawyers to get a little bit better than what everybody else uses to. So again, to Jmore, thank you. Scott Rifkin, thank you. Gary, thank you. Evan, congrats. I'm definitely going to be jumping on and signing up for you as well. And, I hope everybody enjoys this evening's program. And, we look forward to seeing you all hopefully soon in person, safely, but in person. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Thank you, George. And of course, until that time, we'll just keep doing this. And I think we're getting pretty good at it, actually, to be honest with you. So we'll see how it goes. All right, back to the program. Our next guest sets the perpetuating strategic direction of a 56-year-old family-owned company. And you know him well. Through advertising and marketing, he's cultivated a best-in-class culture held by his team that is committed to providing exceptional service and expertise for its customers so that they may focus on their core mission. He currently serves on the finance committee for the Associated, sits on the board of directors for the Believe in Tomorrow Children's Foundation, MedStar Union Memorial Hospital and CDA, and is the current chairman of the board for the National Dealer Council of RICO Americas. It really is a pleasure to welcome in Jeff Elkin, the president of Advanced Business Systems, and we welcome him tonight to our virtual event. Jeff, a few words, please, and thanks for being one of our panelists, one of our guests here tonight.
Well, Gary, it's good to see you. It's been a long time, and I feel like I'm in a living room right now because I have a lot of friends on the screen right now. But I just want to say, Evan, that was awesome. I'm looking over there, but that was you're a real inspiration and a tough act to follow. And for not even for a 27-year-old, for anyone, just your life wisdom that you shared with us is really amazing. So it's a real honor to be here, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's talk about entrepreneurship before we really start in with the questions. And that is, you're in an interesting situation because most, and I want to say 70% of companies that transition from one generation to the other don't make it. Yet you're on the opposite end of that. You've taken your company from your dad and your mom, who we all know very well, and have taken it to another level. So talk about that entrepreneurship journey in evolving a company that has such a rich history here in this town.
Sure. Well, I will say, when Evan shared his story, and that was a story that my parents had to some degree where, wondering how you're going to make payroll the next time. That was not my journey. So my journey was I joined Advance 30 years ago. We were a much smaller company, and really the challenge that I had was transforming Advance from a company that was truly led by two people that had their arms around almost every decision that was made in the organization to the transition to an organization. And so it was really about kind of taking the best practices that they had developed, really understanding that, but then building a team that was able to perpetuate Advance and to constantly evolve it, because we're a far distance from selling carbon paper and typewriter ribbons, which was our start back in the 60s.
I think Scott Rifkin has a question for you, Jeff, before I continue on. So Scott, if you're ready, go.
Sure. So actually not a question. And Jeff, I think I've told you this before, but I want to say it in front of a group of people. Your father was really special. And your father taught me 32 years ago. I know exactly what day it was. Okay. This was the day I opened my medical office. And your father taught me a lesson in, I was being a brash young idiot. And your father taught me a lesson in competence and humility. And I won't go through the whole story, but in competence and humility that I never forgot. And I owe something special to your dad. And I just wanted to say something and how special he was. He didn't even, he barely knew me. I was a tiny little customer, and he did something very special. And I want to thank you and your family for that.
Yeah, well, Scott, thank you. I miss my father, and he was not only a wonderful father, but a wonderful mentor. And, going back to Gary's, question, one of the most important things that we can do as a company in 56 years is make sure that we stay true to those core values and the culture that Advance started on. And even though the technology changes and what we do changes, it's that value system that ultimately leads to the perpetuation of the company.
Jeff, while we have a minute, let's talk about that. You'll know better than anyone about the start of the company. Tell us a little bit about your mom and dad and what motivated them to do this in the first place.
Sure. Well, they both worked for larger companies, and they had a model of the world both for what they didn't want to do and for what they really wanted to do. And they really had a very simple set of values, which was, treat every customer like they're your only customer, always make it right, do the right thing constantly. And as they built a company with employees, treat them like family, understanding that it's ultimately the people in the organization that create those exceptional customer experiences. So that was the founding principle. That's still the foundation of what we do today. It's about improving our customers' businesses and enhancing our team members' lives. And that is the journey we've been on. From, as I said, there's been enormous evolutions. Some of the people on this call have been through some of those evolutions, from the copier to the fax machine, from analog to digital, from monochrome to color, to managed IT services. But it always comes down to, how do we build extreme value for our customers, do something special, always make it right, and provide an environment where people grow and prosper both professionally and personally, because they're very interrelated.
Just out of curiosity, your journey, was there ever a thought that you wouldn't go into the family business, that you will have some other opportunity that you may be interested in?
Sure. Well, I started my career as a stockbroker for Legg Mason. And I'm a couple years younger than Advance. And so my entire model of the world growing up was, not only were my parents business partners, but they were life partners. And so the dinner table was where family meetings took place, pillow talk, although I wasn't there for that. So I really, in retrospect, I needed to find my own way and have my own experience, and check the boxes of knowing that I could do something independently. And it was really only after about 3 years of being outside of the business after college that real draw of not only familiarity, but really being drawn to the culture and to what I had grown up around became really appealing. And I never looked back. That was 30 years ago.
Well, I think all of Baltimore is pretty happy that happened. So thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting piece in the Baltimore Business Journal the other day. I'll just read the title. I've got it in front of me right here. Evolving Your Operations for Today's Business Climate. I think obviously very appropriate for what we're going through right now. And by the way, I just want to mention that all three of our panelists here this afternoon, they all share one common thing, if not more, and that is they are all, not that all businesses are important, but in these times, and you'll see this, a common thread, these three businesses are particularly important for many different reasons. So they all share that as a common thread in today's climate. But regardless, about this piece in the Baltimore Business Journal, Evolving Your Operations for Today's Business Climate, talk to us a little bit about how Advance has helped businesses adjust over these last 3 or 4 months to the new reality that we're in.
Sure. Well, I'm going to go back to, to me, the day that really stands out is Friday, March 13th. That was the day where we as a company completely went remote and everybody separated. And simultaneous to that, many of our customers were either closing down temporarily, hopefully temporarily, or really rushing to that remote environment. And as I don't want to say as luck would have it, but fortunately, we had made a very large commitment to get into the IT business several years ago. And so really the biggest impact that we saw was this rush for companies that may have had a plan, but hadn't executed the plan. And I'm sure as you all know, we had no time to prepare for that. So helping our customers go remote, be able to function, to be able to access whether it was documents or information, to be able to have the security that was locked down within their premise, but all of a sudden when you're sharing technology with your kids that are on Xbox and all the other things, that was a whole another host of problems. So it's, from really since the end or the beginning or the middle of March, we've been really focused on just the continuity of our customers' businesses, knowing that also that's going to evolve into some long-term changes, and also the helping our people, maintain their stability in their lives. It's been quite an interesting journey. And as we said, fortunately, I will say this, Gary, it was an acceleration of trends that were already in place. What we saw, from our perspective, for many of our customers, we just saw what may have happened 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road happen in a matter of weeks. And so it was something that we were prepared to do.
Couple more questions for you, Jeff. You talk about your mom and dad and the culture that they instituted and developed over time with Advanced Business Systems, now 56 years and going strong. These times are interesting because of the remote nature now of the workplace. The culture of a workplace by definition, has to change. So what have you done, or what are you trying to do to still maintain the type of culture that you've done that your family and you have done for 56 years, even though the working conditions are completely different?
Sure. Well, you're nailing something. To us, that's one of the most important things. Culture is, they say culture trumps strategy. And we knew that was a risk. The minute we all separated, that was a tremendous risk, and that we had to mitigate that immediately. One of the things we did was we had an opportunity, because a lot of our business went away for a period of time, that we could focus our people on some key initiatives that were very important for the ongoing improvement of our business. But we had the opportunity to really focus on them. And so we put teams of people together that didn't necessarily collaborate every day. And for months, they worked on these really big, hairy, audacious goals. And so that was one thing, just the collaboration that was in place. Using things like Microsoft Teams or Zoom. I record a video every week, just updating our company, and just to have that connection there. We have Teams calls where we will have different groups constantly, again, updating both on COVID as well as just general things throughout the business. And I'd say the most recent thing is we just celebrated our 56th anniversary, and not being able to gather literally, we were really fortunate. We found a company that allows us to have these virtual game nights. So we had a group of virtual game nights where everybody came together and just had a blast. And similar to this, we saw each other, got to compete and have some fun along the way.
As usual, Jeff Elkin pulls it off. Absolutely. Hey, a final question for you, Jeff. You alluded to it a minute ago. Changes that may be permanent for the foreseeable future, at least, as far as business and the business community is concerned. What do you see, and what do you think Maryland businesses should be doing to evolve and prepare for some perhaps permanent changes?
Sure. The thing that I think everybody is contemplating is, post-COVID, do we go back to the way things were? And I just don't think that's going to happen. People, this remote working works for a lot of people, or at least some hybrid of on-premise and remote, I think is going to be the new normal moving forward. So what we see, the biggest need for our customers is they say, remote's working great for me, but I still need to access, whether it's documents in my office, files, things like that. So really getting people into a position where, whether they're on-premise or remote, they have access to all their tools. That's number one. And number two is locking down that security. Most companies that were laser focused on security did a pretty good job of locking it down, again, on-premise using the existing technology. But the minute companies scrambled to go remote, it changed everything. There's a lot of risk out there right now. And so what we're really focused on is making sure that those same security protocols and stability can follow the worker or the user, whether they're working from their home, working from some other remote site, or on premise. Those are the two things that really, I think, are going to be a big theme going in 2021.
Well, Jeff, if you'll allow me for a minute, if I can borrow a moniker from another company, you're in good hands with Advanced Business Systems. That's what I want to say. Jeff, thank you so much. We really appreciate you and what you've done. That's Jeff Elkin, the president.
Great to see everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. That is Jeff Elkin, the president of Advanced Business Systems. We're going to do our second raffle winner for the night, 2 out of 3. Again, the prize is a mini harvest basket from Hungry Harvest and their CEO, Evan Lutz, who is our award winner tonight and one of our guests. Delivery is free. It consists of 8 to 10 pounds of produce. You get 1 green, you get 3 vegetables, and you get 2 to 3 types of fruit. Our second winner for tonight is Betsy Narrow. Betsy, congratulations. And again, Evan will do his due diligence to get that to you. All right, our third panelist, our third guest here tonight with more than a decade of experience. Our next guest leads the strategy and growth for a growing company. It's Amatus Health. He helps their now 14 facilities around the country achieve their objectives and make sure that healthcare is available to everyone. He was formerly the senior vice president for 12 years at Trico Partners, where he specialized in financial management, transaction analysis, and acquisition strategy. He's an active member of his community, sits on multiple committees for his synagogue and his children's school. We welcome in Mark Gold, the CEO of Amatus Health. And Mark, welcome in. It's a pleasure to again be with you twice now within the last few weeks. Thank you so much.
Gary, thanks so much for having us. Thank you, George Nempos. Evan, I'm like still boggling about your story. So expect me to reach out to you post-story, in addition to hopefully winning the third prize. I understand there's a third prize. Gary told me that, potentially you could rig it for me. I expect you to hold up, your side of the bargain. Thank you everybody for having me.
Yeah, that rigging is a private conversation, Mark. Don't forget.
Oops. Well, amongst friends, I feel like we're in the living room. I think someone said that before. I think Scott mentioned that, or someone mentioned that. I kind of feel like we're in the living room. So
we are in the virtual living room. Thank you. Mark, as I did with our first two guests, Jeff and Evan, just start us off with your entrepreneurial story. I mean, this is about entrepreneurship. You are an entrepreneur, and what's behind it? What are you all about?
I appreciate it. Given my history, sort of getting started, I definitely went the route of working for companies and trying to climb the ranks and making, I guess, an impact for myself specifically. By the time I got into what we do now here at Amatus, it was definitely an interesting story because it wasn't as focused on being an entrepreneur and building something independent of myself. It was more to fill a need in our community. What we do, of course, is mental health and addiction, and that does not discriminate. And within our community, it became more of an issue. So we went out to look for ways to address it. And a few years later, here I am together with my partners doing something that we're super excited about. So, again, I go back to Evan, your story, where it's sort of, hey, a class and a natural play of events and ups and downs, and you know what I'm talking about. The idea of going ahead and having set out to address a need within the community, and then sort of parlay that into a career is something that is super rewarding on multiple levels, because not only are we giving back to the community, but also, having a fulfillment from my own passion, to build. So going back to the entrepreneur spirit, I think what you had mentioned earlier, Gary, is there's a common thread here that, there's a theme, and the theme is that, we're all passionate on what we do. We give it our all. And it's not easy. So I think it's important to go ahead and share that everybody, when people are successful, right, everyone focuses on their success, but doesn't focus on the story of what led to said success. So, I'm not a big reader for the most part, though I seem to have read a lot of biographies. The recent one I just finished was on Phil Knight with Nike. And here I think of, growing up, and Nike is just monstrous company, and we're thinking that they're just all over the world. But actually reading the book and seeing the first 10 years of how Phil Knight and how Nike evolved, I could tell you that the hard days that we go through as a company leader, or just in anything within life, and especially now with the challenges that we all have with COVID and everything that's happening, the ability to know that today might not look as exciting, but tomorrow is a brighter day. So that's that.
Mark, let's jump right into COVID, because I think, and we've actually discussed this before, we discussed this in our interview a few weeks ago, the COVID experience in your field could have and has had severe implications for a lot of people who are addicted to, drugs, addicted to whatever they're addicted to. And, you're right on the front line of that. Can you describe or just talk about what impact COVID has had on you and your business and what you've seen over the last 3 or 4 months?
Sure. So it's interesting because, of course, just like any other businesses, we have the challenges of adapting to, to COVID, from a back office infrastructure, from the safety, just sort of, I think Jeff, you had mentioned it earlier, just overnight sort of shifting a whole entire structure that has been set forth and just literally overnight. I mean, I can imagine visualizing different businesses just scattered and coming in and taking, we've just in our own building, we're very into our screens, and I came in the next day after we officially, went remote, and just there's 100 computer screens gone. So adapting to, from a back office infrastructure is definitely one thing, but as far as the impact of what we do, which is ultimately provide, treatment to those that are, addicted or mental health, it's been more challenging because the need has become, even further, has further increased. We look at, addiction or mental health as a coping mechanism, right? So in other words, someone goes through a life, a life challenge, and they find themselves using as a coping mechanism. So with everything that is going on now, with just people's, there's people that are either losing their businesses or sadly losing family members to it, or even just being distant from their family members. I know for myself, I could talk for myself and my own family, that, certain family members, especially the older ones, strive from that connection, from that constant visits. So visiting grandma from, outside and sort of waving doesn't have the same impact for it. So the amount, the admissions have increased. They continue to increase, and they likely will continue to increase. So our ability for us as a provider and for anybody who's within our space is to is to up that game and be able to go ahead and make sure that there's treatment and opportunities for everybody, especially just on the educational part. I think that's definitely one area that has that has continually ticked up. And I'll find myself in certain times where it just becomes ultra stressful, right? Or just COVID is annoying. Like I haven't seen anybody, right? And I think Evan mentioned, he's like, wow, wait, let's just take the moment in. I see hey, hi, right? And then, so just being able to go ahead and go through our day-to-day challenges, the ability to understand that it's okay and just, go through a musa, whatever it is, that allows you to go ahead and address our mental health. So mental health, addiction, for the most part, those who are mostly would have been triggered in general, given their life circumstances, has only been amplified, with the onset of COVID and anything race related within our country.
Mark, I think it's safe to say that you're a man of faith. I think people can see the kippah on the top of your head. Can you tell us how your faith has informed the way you go about your life, about the way you go about your business?
Sure. So, it's interesting because when I went into this, I never really thought about it. But as we navigated the space and really just set out to do what we do, it kind of perfectly aligned. We have, of course, from a religious aspect, we have, our values. And a lot of our values are very much focused on a sense of community, on a sense of selflessness, giving back, the spirituality, and however, anyone takes spirituality into consideration, the ability of, to utilize spirituality, especially within the 12 step and just focusing is just visit one within self and identify, your own strength, to keep on going. So when we're talking about what we do, everything that we do is very much community based, providing a sense of community, providing a sense of, of awareness and selflessness, right? So in other words, again, I go back to what I said earlier, there's nothing more rewarding than being in a career that is something that allows me to provide for my family, but at the same time gives opportunities for those that are in need. So it's being selflessness. I don't even know if it's feasible, while yet also having a sense of fulfillment. So it's giving with with having a sense of fulfillment. So as far as our religious values are very much aligned with what we do, because what we do is try to go ahead and give back and help people, be the better part of themselves and pull them back into society.
Nice. Mark, if I may, addiction and mental health, those are topics that historically are difficult to talk about. I think that there is potentially shame and guilt perhaps involved with that. People may not know a lot about it. So my question is, the perception of mental illness and mental health and addiction seems to be changing over the last few years. Do you see that, and how is it changing?
It is very much changing. It's unfortunate that it's taken us as a country with an epidemic that is not new. It's sadly been around for probably forever, but just as I navigate experiences and deal with either mentors or providers that have been doing this, we're talking 30, 40, 50 years. So it's definitely been it's definitely been around. Sadly, it's been pushed under the rug, like many other things, that we don't address properly. But yes, Gary, I'm happy to go ahead and share that the stigma, right, that has been around, addiction or mental health is slowly been fading over the past 2 to 3 years. And now, definitely with the onset of COVID and just, school systems, everybody is aware that, the challenges being faced from children all the way up to, to senior citizens is definitely something that needs to be addressed. So the stigma is fading, and hopefully we can remove it completely. We have definitely seen it. How it's impacted us is we've opened, and our goal, of course, just as an organization, is we treat everybody. Right? We're not trying to go ahead and focus on a certain target market or a certain niche. Ultimately, we go ahead and we treat everybody. And that goal has allowed us to go ahead and expand our footprint. And our goal within our footprint is to go where there isn't treatment, not where there is treatment and it's exciting and so on and so forth. And when we've gone into these communities, back a few years ago, we had, zoning issues and just nobody wants us here. It's for somebody else, which there's actually been a significant shift. We're actually being called and invited in by certain communities that they're like, hey, we need treatment here. Can you come here? Can you come here? So I think that alone, having, lay leaders in communities and school systems, and just for school systems, we have an educational track where we send out, a lot of our individuals within our regions to schools to just educate, right? To speak about what to look out for, and that there's healthy choices is what we call it. So, initially, the amount of schools that we'd reach out to say, hey, we'd love to come, give a free educational tool. They're like, stigma. At this point, it's been completely removed. And, we don't have enough manpower at this point to go out there and to really, to really share the educational part and ensure that there's treatment for all.
Hey, Mark, a final question to you. You talk about the school system, schools, kids. At what age do you engage a child in talking about this, and how do you engage? Thoughts on that?
It's a great question. So me being a father of 4, my oldest being 9, I think about that all the time, because I'm like, when is the opportunity? When's the right opportunity to sort of start addressing? Anything from well, anything, right? I'll keep it to that. But I think about it, and I think that their curiosity ultimately peaks at that age, starting from maybe 7, to 12. And that is, for me, and again, I don't think this is like, this is more of an opinion that I take by myself, is when their curiosity is peaked and they trust, right? So their curiosity peaks at that 7 to 12, and at that point they trust you. Hopefully they'll trust me, for forever, but I can imagine that once it becomes teenage years, it becomes a little bit more difficult. I'll report back maybe in, 6-7 years. The ability to go ahead and at a time where you can approach the conversation where they haven't yet, explored, and their interest is peaked, and address it in a way where you're just providing them that there's healthier choices. And I think, going back to, it's interesting the way you presented the question, Gary, is because when we went out to the school system to really just go ahead and take, individuals from our team that that are in recovery, and they want to share their experiences. They want to share, what led them to the wrong choices and to choose healthy choices. One of the bigger questions was, well, okay, we'll have, the middle school, and he's like, no, right? What our kids are much smarter than we think that they are, and they're going to see it. And if you're bringing it and introducing it in a way that you're letting them know that this is something to potentially stay away from and choose healthy choices, I'm of the opinion that, there's no young age, right? As long as they're able to understand what you're talking about, I think it's a perfect opportunity.
Mark, what you do is so important. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that'll do it for the speakers portion of this afternoon's event. And we do thank and appreciate all 3 of our speakers. Evan Lutz, the CEO of Hungry Harvest, thank you. Jeff Elkin, the president of Advanced Business Systems, thank you. And Mark Gold, the CEO of Amatus Health and Amatus Recovery Centers, thank you. Now, we'd like to offer all of our attendees the opportunity to join what we call breakout groups. And this will be for introductions to one another, chat, etc. We'll do this for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll bring everyone back together for some final thoughts. And there's one more prize winner, actually, after our chat event, after our breakout event. So please stay with us. So let's do the breakout events, and then we'll come back and wrap it up with a final winner and some final thoughts.